There's deep concern over China and the development in China among people in the environmental community and in many of the governments of the world about what that means to our future atmosphere and our future environment, because of the well-known fact of China's ever-increasing and robust use of a great natural resource that they have in abundance, and they have more of it than we think they do or know they do. And adjacent to China is a country called Mongolia, which has more coal than the state of Wyoming in the United States, which has a lot. So there is a lot of coal in China yet to be developed and in countries neighboring China. But what is not discussed when people talk about China is the great moral achievement of the People's Republic of China in bringing hundreds of millions of people out of poverty by developing an indigenous resource called coal. It's going on there every day, and all you have to do is go and tour the countryside and you will see it. These metrics are spectacular. They should be. They are proud. They are going to continue doing that, even as they discuss in Copenhagen emission goals and whatnot. But they have been called by IEA an example for the developing world because of what they have done in bringing people out of poverty. Next slide. And that is based on electrification, of course. They use coal for many things in China, coal to methanol, coal to liquids, coal to gas, but primarily it's an electricity story. And these metrics all talk about the positives that have happened to society and to people, normal, everyday people living their lives in China because of the greater access to energy and electricity, whether it's GDP growth, irrigated land, human development index, food production, steel production, concrete production, poverty decrease, undernourished population decreasing, and on and on. It is a positive externality that is driven by coal. When I started with Peabody in 2001, I think there were at 1.2 billion tons of coal a year in China, about what the U.S. was producing. This year they're at 2.7 billion tons. They're going to 3.5, 4 billion tons. Just as the sun will come up tomorrow morning in the east, that is what will happen. Next slide. So here are the population growth trends that we all know. We all know, too, that these population growth trends require new energy supply, large amounts of new energy supply. Global population is to grow 25% in 25 years, over 8 billion people by 2030. I think I saw something the other day that says we are closing in on 7 billion people right now. The U.S. isn't a developing country, but it is a developing country because we're at 300 million people going to 400 million people. So we're going to need more energy in the United States as well at our per capita energy consumption levels that we are today. People use electricity more in their households every day. Multiple TVs, multiple computers, refrigerators, on and on. In any event, the demand coming at us for energy consumption is enormous. So this puts it in just in terms of some simple figures I sort of enjoy, where you see by 2030 an increase, not double where we are today, but a substantial increase in the order of 60%. And this is based on a Carnegie Mellon study, and it is their projection that coal with carbon capture and storage will be 15% to 50% below nuclear, wind, or natural gas with carbon capture and storage. Natural gas is a bridge fuel to carbon capture and storage because these natural gas plants that have been put in since 2000 and that will be put in for sure going forward all make CO2. It's 50% less than coal, but you could eliminate all coal in the United States and substitute 100% natural gas tomorrow and do nothing to climate change under greenhouse theory. Zero, because it is 50%. And of course, load is going to grow in the United States. So natural gas as a low carbon answer is only a short-term and a very short-term answer, not a long-term answer. Because putting post-combustion on the back of a natural gas plant because of the diluted stream of CO2, it has less carbon, is more expensive. It's much more expensive. And that's why Carnegie Mellon concluded this. Now, I don't know who did the Carnegie Mellon study. We paid attention to the study. These are the numbers. I heard Wayne Leonard from Energy make the very same point in Cambridge, Massachusetts, at an MIT conference talking about coal with carbon capture and storage being a lower cost alternative than nuclear and a full cost for wind and for solar once backup and transmission was allocated. In the United States, this wind corridor that T. Boone talks about, it's in the middle of the country. 76% of the load is east of the Mississippi River. It's $200 billion worth of transmission lines to get that electricity to load. I don't think so. They've been talking about the Alaska natural gas pipeline for 20 years. They'll be talking 10 years from now about long, many miles, thousands of miles of transmission line for renewables from the desert Southwest, where I grew up, I love it, and the middle of the country where the wind blows, and I like that too, to get it to the East Coast. Next slide. There is an opportunity for coal in the United States, a business opportunity, a near-term opportunity, a right-now opportunity, and it's called enhanced oil recovery. The Department of Energy estimates there's something like 47 billion barrels of oil that can be recovered right now at today's prices using CO2 as a flood in those reservoirs, and that's something that we are pursuing actively. It's an ongoing business. There are companies like Denbury that are doing it. Great Plains up in North Dakota is obviously doing it. It's a huge potential market for coal. It is not a long-term solution to climate, no question, but it for sure is low-hanging fruit, and you can put a lot of CO2 down there. Department of Energy are talking about 12 billion tons of CO2 sequestration using best practices ultimately for CO2 sequestration. Next slide. And these states colored in red show you the states in the United States where that is a potential. The best potential is Gulf of Mexico, obviously, but also in the Four Corners and then California. Next slide. There's been a lot of activity going on around the world and in Washington with respect to carbon capture and storage, and I won't take you through the details of this, but that's a number of items that you can see there. This presentation, if you would like it, I'd be happy to make available to any of you. Next slide. And this is fairly typical of the way policymakers talk about the importance of carbon capture and storage technology being deployed on a widespread basis. Nobuo Tanaka, who I have discussed this with directly as early as last fall, I think was when that happened, and of course former British Prime Minister Tony Blair. You see their statements there with respect to the importance of CCS. Mr. Director Tanaka said to me, there is no climate goal achievable in any time frame without widespread deployment of carbon capture and storage. A. B. Coal with carbon capture and storage is a low-cost, low-carbon alternative, and similar to the conclusions in the Carnegie Mellon study. Next slide. The American Recovery and Reinvestment Act, the so-called stimulus bill, has $3.4 billion in it for carbon capture and storage, including $1 billion for FutureGen, and I am on the FutureGen board. I think FutureGen will go forward, and the reason I think it will go forward, next slide, is because he's for it. And Dick Durbin, senator from Illinois, is for it. President Obama during the campaign was eloquent in the need for clean coal. We take that at face value. We are working closely with the administration to make it happen. Thank you.